Hey everyone, welcome back to another hardware news recap for the week, and welcome back to videos in our studio. We just got back from Newegg a couple days ago at this point, and so we're happy to be home and filming, but it was also really nice to travel again and do some content on the road. All right, for this one, we're going to be talking about AMD's Navi 330 series GPUs and how they will be potentially non-monolithic and on 5 and 6 nanometer process nodes. We talked about Cooler Master's new shoes. The case looks like one, so there's some crossover collab at this point for sneakerhead YouTube and tech YouTube. Additionally, we'll be recapping very briefly Newegg. That story's gotten enough coverage at this point, but we'll give you a really quick overview of some last points we had. And the Nvidia-Arm deal is officially dead, among other news. Before that, this video is brought to you by Arctic and the Liquid Freezer 2 line of liquid coolers, which tested among the best in our thermal charts for CPU coolers. The Arctic Liquid Freezer series has had continual advancement since our original review, with updates in the mounting kit, including an AMD offset bracket for better thermals, and a longer warranty. Arctic also has its MX5 thermal compound, available on the market now if you need some thermal paste for your regular maintenance. Learn more at the links in the description below. So first up, on the Newegg story, this is going to be extremely short, just some quick updates for you. Don't want to drive it into the ground. First of all, if you receive an email from Newegg addressing your previous open box or refurb or return that was denied or rejected, and they've suddenly approved it, please send that information to us. Let us know, hey, Newegg's helping me out now, because we want to know that. Newegg claims that it is going to be helping. It claims it's gone all the way through 2021 to help people who've had cases similar to ours open where they were wrongly denied a refund or a replacement. And we want to hear from you if Newegg does something positive. Our goal was not to just beat down Newegg into the ground. Our goal was to hopefully help Newegg improve and get back to what it was. That's what I grew up building computers with, was Newegg. So we're really hopeful here. Now, we're also skeptical, obviously, but it's sort of a healthy skepticism where we need to let them just do their thing for a little bit, see what happens, and then obviously if it's not resolved in a satisfactory manner, we'll revisit. And we'll revisit anyway, even if they do resolve it. But we want to hear from you if it's positive or negative. So if you have further bad experiences with Newegg support or good ones, email egg, at gamersnexus.net. We will not reply to all of them, but we'll probably read all of them, sort them, and we'll keep information anonymous. And if we want to share for some reason, we'll ask you about it. So you don't need to preface the email with that. A couple other things from Newegg. So Terry Cox, who was the gentleman sitting closest to me in that interview, and is the VP of Customer Service, been with the company 6 months. He has remained in contact with us. So just my genuine feelings here, I do think that at least 2 of the people in that room actually were listening and wanted to improve things, and hopefully my judgment there is accurate and we get some of that. But he's remained in contact, he's asked for additional information, and hopefully that is a positive thing, goes in the right direction. One other thing here too, a lot of you picked up on the fact that 3 out of the 4 people in that room from Newegg's team had only been with the company for a few months to 3 years max, with the one guy on the end, Vince, who has been there for 19 years but only recently started his position at a higher up level. So with that noted, a couple quick thoughts I had on that. It could be a good thing. It could mean that these are people who are not sort of brainwashed or poisoned by Newegg's culture at this point, and they have a chance to fix things. That's good. It could be a bad thing. It could be that the executive, there's another step above all of them, which would be the C-suite, and maybe there's a president in there. It could be a bad thing if that group of people is just purging higher ups if they don't fall in line. And we don't know. We'll see what happens. But just quick thoughts on that. And finally here, I wanted to give a huge thanks to a couple of people who worked with us on this piece. So like I said, I took it very seriously. I wasn't sure if the meeting was going to happen up until the last minute because Newegg kept going back and forth on whether it would allow us to film. This caused us to run simulations for things like what happens if we get turned away by security? What happens if the police show up? Do we push it as far as getting arrested? And then on the other end, we were pushing for what happens if it's the CEO we meet with? What if it's the PR guy who's been there for 1 month? What do we do? What if it's a group of people? So we ran sort of all these simulations, basically just talking through it, doing a lot of practice and discussion of topics. And that really helped me go in there with the right mindset, which was one that was productive and hopefully trying to help Newegg, but which was also prepared for if Newegg pulled the rug out from under us at the last second, which it looked like it might do up until we showed up. So big thanks to Rob Teller, who is in the industry. He's been in the industry a very long time and is known mostly for working on cases, worked maybe most famously on the S340 from NZXT a long time ago. And Rob provided a lot of helpful insight, was a sounding board, and also drove us by Newegg's headquarters the day in advance that we could sort of visually prepare for what we were stepping into. And then another thanks to our distributor, Michael, who handles the shipping of all the stuff like our coasters and mod mats and everything. He was a massive help in this as well and made sure I went into it prepared with what we would need to make sure we got something out of the interview. I didn't want to show up and just have it be like everyone thinking Steve should have pushed harder or Steve pushed too hard. So that's why we took it so seriously. Kind of different, different from what I normally do. And so that's why we worked hard on it. All right, first real news story. AMD's Navi 30 series GPUs will be non-monolithic in theory. That's the rumor anyway. AMD's Infinity Data Fabric Silicon design engineer did a bit of oversharing on LinkedIn, and this was spotted by Blue is Violet on Twitter. The engineer had a rather impressive laundry list of products, many formerly unannounced, attached to the LinkedIn profile. The LinkedIn profile has since been amended. There have been several screenshots that are still circulating online. And among the products listed on the profile, there's a notable mention of AMD's Navi 30 series GPUs, where the engineer's current listed products include Navi 31, 5 nanometer and 6 nanometer for that, Navi 32, 5 and 6 as well, and Navi 3, 6 nanometers. Additionally, the profile listed an announced HPC accelerator, the MI300. And reading between the lines then a little bit, we can extrapolate that Navi 31 and 32 are likely to be of MCM designs, but we'll see. Now, there's a few ways to go about this. One is, you see 2 process nodes listed. It could just be that there's variations of the same silicon shipping. These days, though, it's more common that this is an indicator of multiple chiplets or of sort of a stacked 3D design like what Intel does with what it calls Foveros. So those are kind of the options. MCM has been something, multi-chip modules, what that means is something that AMD's been looking at for a long time. Nvidia ran white papers on it years ago, and so MCM GPUs are the next natural step. This is interesting because it does 2 things. One is it helps drive down the cost. So because they are non-monolithic, the companies can make smaller dies, smaller pieces of silicon, and then mount them normally to a substrate and use an interconnect so they can all communicate with each other. So this keeps costs down because the yields are higher. With large monolithic dies like a 3080 or 90 might use, there's a much lower yield. There's a higher risk of some part of that die getting blown up in manufacturing and having to either be discarded or binned down. And so that's the downside. But as far as the downsides of MCMs go, normally it's things like additional complexity with the substrate and the packaging, it's called, where you bundle everything together. There's additional challenges with the interconnect. So now you have a slower interface for the components of the GPU to communicate with each other, much like you have Infinity Fabric as a potential bottleneck on AMD Ryzen CPUs. So that's kind of where that's going if AMD does go with an MCM design. Now, AMD has had a lot of success with its non-monolithic CPUs, like Ryzen and Threadripper, obviously, and the industry at large has been slowly moving towards this, and that includes Nvidia and Intel. So this seems potentially likely. Additionally, Navi 31 has been rumored for some time to be AMD's first MCM design aimed at consumers, and late last year, there were rumblings that AMD had successfully taped out its design. AMD has already confirmed that RDNA 3 GPUs would be coming in 2022, and Navi 3 or 30 series GPUs should land in the form of the RX 7000 series if we're sort of guessing at the likely product naming. Up next, this one's just kind of fun. So Cooler Master decided to kick off its 30th anniversary in style with some new cases. One of these, really interesting. It started as a case mod, and it's going to be an actual case for sale, it looks like. So although this won't be found in shoe stores, and it looks like it only comes in the size of Transformer foot, the new Cooler Master Sneaker X is a case shaped like a sneaker. It's finally the tech YouTube crossover with sneakerhead YouTube. The design comes from case modder JMDF, who submitted it in CM's 2020 Case Mod World Series. From the images, we can see the Sneaker X case is in white and either pink or red. The design is largely open air, with the shoe elements more for show than actually closing things off. The design also features a pair of shock absorbers, a feature our actual shoes could use if and when trade shows start again. Cooler Master also had a more practical case to announce if you don't think this one is fitting for you, and it's a sleeker, small form factor case that it calls the Mini X. Or is it Mini 10 or Minix? We're not really sure, but we're going to go with Mini 10 for now. So at this point, there aren't many specs or prices for either of these products, and from the renders, there's not much we can say about the Minix other than it looks to be a bit more closed off than Lian Li's A4 SFX from later in this news video. Both the Mini 10, I keep doing that, see if it bothers anyone, and the sneaker case will be available for pre-order later this year, but as we'll be talking about in the Lian Li story in a moment as well, we don't anticipate reviewing these cases, at least right now. Maybe we'll do a build in the sneaker one if they have one available, but probably won't be doing a full-on thermal benchmark for it because it just doesn't seem like something people would be buying it for. We may try on the sneaker case for fun, though. Up next, the Nvidia-Arm deal is officially dead. We're covering this one because we've been talking about this for a year and a half now. Yes, it has been that long, where Nvidia approached Arm, or SoftBank rather, Arm's parent holding company, with a $40 billion offer at the time to acquire Arm. This was entered with the expectation from Nvidia that it would face a lot of logistical and regulatory hurdles because it's two very large companies that are very important in their space, merging and potentially creating antitrust concerns. So it was somewhat doomed from the outset, but it's over now. At the time of the announcement, Nvidia and SoftBank had outlined an 18-month timeline. It is more or less 1 month away at this point, and that indicates the companies had some understanding of the scope required to appease lawmakers. The UK and the European Union have had an ongoing investigation into the deal for months now and have cited national security concerns. Meanwhile, the US FTC sued Nvidia and SoftBank to flat out block the deal. What's more, Nvidia and SoftBank never even got started in China, where the purchase was expected to face an even colder reception. China has been historically reluctant to rubber stamp these kinds of deals. For example, the Chinese government killed Qualcomm's $44 billion bid for NXP semiconductor previously. So with a lawsuit in the US over this, skepticism from the UK and the EU, and probably skepticism or blocking in China, it died. And that's not really much of a surprise at this point, although Nvidia was very confident it would go through, at least on the outside. SoftBank at this point will be beginning to prepare to take Arm public. That's its next play. And it's looking at March 2023 for a timeline of when that might happen. It would be IPO by the end of the next fiscal year. Nvidia, for its part, will retain its 20-year Arm license, and it will have to part ways with $1.25 billion made as a prepayment to SoftBank for the purchase of Arm. And we're not sure how heavy $1.25 billion is, but if any of the C-suite got some of that money, they need to be careful with those parachutes. Arm's longtime CEO, Simon Segars, is stepping down immediately, and additional leadership changes are expected as well, although a reason wasn't given for that specific step down. The timing is definitely not a coincidence, though. Up next, another rumor, this one about Intel. So Intel's Raptor Lake is the next rumored CPU coming up after Alder Lake, which is out today in the 12 series. Raptor Lake currently has been shown in the ashes of the Singularity benchmark, at least if this holds to be true, as potentially having a 32-thread option. And this is a desktop class CPU, so not just HEDT coming back. It is, in fact, something like an i9-13900K would probably be the name of it. So that part is listed in a new benchmark leak posted by BenchLeaks on Twitter, and the part shows up as a genuine Intel quadruple zero part with 32 threads, though the 32 threads are a bit misleading here because the ashes of the Singularity benchmark hasn't been updated to reflect the core topology of Alder Lake. And of course, in turn, that would mean Raptor Lake, which isn't even out yet. The benchmark reads 32 threads as 32 logical cores, which might also explain the sort of low 13,400 point score there. Just 100 points, by the way, above a 12900K, which is a thing that is out. So, as ever, this is probably early engineering silicon. The frequencies aren't final. Probably not much else is. And Ashes also doesn't really, it's old. It might not scale well with Alder Lake. We haven't even bothered to look at it in probably 3 or 4 years at this point. So, may not work well anyway with this architecture. The benchmark results do seem to confirm earlier reports that the i9-13900K CPUs would utilize an 8 performance core and 16 E-core configuration. So that's really the big news here, is that It would be 8 P-cores with hyper-threading, so you get 16 total threads of performance cores, and then 16 E-core only, just the cores, no hyper-threading, bringing you to 32 threads for the thread count. Now, Raptor Lake is set for a 2022 launch window. This is a public roadmap, so that's official. And it's going to be competing with AMD Zen 4 CPUs, which will be coming out sometime by or around the end of the year as well. Up next, Best Buy in the news. Best Buy saw what happened to Newegg, and it decided, why should we capitalize on that when we can just do our own? We're buddies with Newegg. We want to take the heat off of them, so we're going to do something also disgusting and anti-consumer to see if we can help out a little bit. At least that's the way we interpreted it. Best Buy is doubling down on its Total Tech Paywall. It's a $200 subscription service, and what it does is it allows you to buy a ticket to be allowed to buy an item. It's insane, and it's not even that. You buy a ticket for $200. They should just sell these on like Ticketmaster or Live Nation or something at this point. So you buy a $200 ticket, which then allows you the chance to maybe buy an item. That's the proper way. It'd be like if you bought a concert ticket and the ticket was $200. You paid a lot for the chance to buy some good seats. You show up at the concert and they're like, sorry, we're sold out. Thanks for the $200. Fuck off. So that's Best Buy right now. My Best Buy members have already had first dibs on Xbox Series X and S and PS5 consoles. More recently, however, Best Buy has gated an entire batch of RTX 30 series cards behind the Total Tech program. It deemed it as an exclusive event. Can we just please just take a moment and reflect on those words? We are at a peak gross consumerism. It might not even be that. It might be peak gross predatory companies selling to consumers. Whatever it is, it's the peak of it. There is no higher status than where we are now, because we're at a point where we're calling it an event to be given generously the opportunity to buy from a company whose entire existence is predicated on selling you products. But it's your privilege to buy? That's where we are? All this was spotted by Twitter user Cameron Ritz, who routinely monitors restocks for various retailers and posts about them online, and has actually paid special attention to exclusive items and events like this one. So Best Buy's most recent restock included the entire 30 series range, including the 3060 Ti up to the 3080, and according to Tom's Hardware, the restock only lasted about 4 hours, even with it sitting behind the $200 subscription paywall, which probably just benefits scalpers anyway. Best Buy's tactics here aren't a surprise, given how many retailers are taking advantage of the scarcity of highly sought-after electronics. Newegg already uses its arbitrary and laughable Newegg shuffles to dump useless stock on customers trying to buy graphics cards. For example, the gigabyte exploding power supplies previously were getting dumped on users trying to buy a GPU. Best Buy will almost certainly frame this move as creating value for its program members. And that may be half true, but Best Buy also knows that a whole lot of people who otherwise have zero interest in Total Tech, as if Best Buy even has the position in the market to use the word tech anywhere. It's not like they really know much about what they're selling generally. I've had bad experiences there. But Best Buy is collecting a $200 fee on top of selling a GPU or a console, and you're not guaranteed to get it. That's where we are. That's the news item. Let's move on to something more interesting. Lian Li collaborates on new small form factor case designs. In our previous factory tours of Lian Li's Taiwan-based factory, we were able to see some of the Dan case systems getting manufactured. Some of those were made where we looked at Lian Li's line where they welded the snaps onto the chassis so that it could snap into place. We don't really review small form factor cases. We don't cover them too often, but when there's an interesting one, we look at it. And this one is interesting. Lian Li is working with Dan Cases, the boutique case manufacturer, to OEM some of the new cases, and they've done this in the past as well. Dan Cases don't offer as many designs, but they do offer two here, and they specialize in sleek, practical SFF cases. The A4 SFX Dan case is the new one that Lian Li is working on to bring designs to a wider audience at a lower price. There will be two SKUs for this, $120 for one and $155 for the other, and the difference is the PCIe riser cable. It's Gen 3 for the cheaper and Gen 4 for for the $35 upsell. What's impressive though about the A4 is what it can fit in the form factor. So this case claims it supports a triple slot GPU and a full 240mm CLC all inside of a box that's 5.5 by 9.6 by 12.8 inches large, and we'll put the millimeter sizing on the screen as well. Lian Li's video shows the case with a Founders Edition RTX 30 series card, and strangely, considering that Lian Li makes a perfectly good CLC, a 240mm EK AIO. As is always the case with these two components in particular, tolerances will differ significantly from one manufacturer to the next, so if you're interested in this, double check the measurements for your components carefully so that you can make sure it clears. For some perspective on this little box, it's just about 25 cubic inches larger than the Lian Li TU100 lunchbox case that Patrick has used internally for capture systems. That case was listed at 6.3 by 10.8 by 9.5 inches. And again, we'll do the millimeters on the screen for you. We still don't have plans to expand our case reviews right now for SFF, but the A4 SFX is interesting nonetheless, so we wanted to point it out. Up next, a fun addition for the Steam Deck. So Valve has made the CAD files for the Steam Deck shell public and open source. This means that you'd be able to, as Valve stated, in theory, just 3D print your own Steam Deck, or at least the shell of it, and see how it feels. The audience doesn't seem that big, but if you wanted to, you could. More realistically, this is useful for chassis designers or accessory designers. This is great to see because Valve, if it wants this device or this market to go anywhere, it has to support a wider ecosystem than just Valve. Valve seems keenly aware of this, and ultimately its product is to sell Steam games anyway. So this is the right approach rather than just trying to sue anyone who makes some plates to attach to the console. In this scenario, Valve has released some step files. You can download them and modify it however you want. Manufacturers also will have some more confidence that their measurements are right. So this is useful too because it means that third-party accessories are more likely to actually fit. Now, this isn't the first time Valve has done something like this. Valve did this previously with the Steam controller, which was such a massive success that Valve had to put them on sale for $5 to get rid of them. Unlike the Steam controller, though, we were pretty impressed with the build quality of the Steam Deck overall when we took it apart in our teardown, and we're interested to see what people come up with their 3D printers. Just briefly, too, in another post, Valve announced that iFixit would be an authorized seller of replacement parts. So iFixit, posting its own teardown on the Steam Deck along the way with some x-rays of the device, will have components available for you if you need to replace something, maybe like an analog stick that gets damaged or dies in the future. And finally, just a fun story to illustrate the era that we're in. We like ending hardware news with something a little dystopian and cyberpunk-like because we're optimistic like that. Today we have a good one. It's featuring NFTs, everyone's favorite hot topic. HMRC, or Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs, basically the UK's equivalent to the IRS, seized 3 NFTs and arrested 3 people in the investigation of an attempt to defraud the government of 1.4 million British pounds, or just under 1.9 million USD. The description of the alleged crime by HMRC authorities sounds like it could have been a cheap William Gibson wannabe novel a decade ago. According to HMRC, the suspects used, quote, sophisticated methods to cover their digital trail, including, quote, false and stolen identities, false addresses, prepaid, unregistered mobile phones, VPNs, and false invoices. This sounds like the plot of maybe a Jason Bourne or Mission Impossible movie. We'd have to go back and check, but it's definitely up there. And this is especially expounded because the HMRC says there's an impressive 250 fake companies that were formed to create this tax fraud. The seized assets include 3 NFTs and about 5,000 British pounds in unspecified cryptocurrency. HMRC was also quick to point out that this should serve as a warning for anyone trying to use crypto or online assets to commit fraud in the future. That's it for this one. Thanks as always for watching. You can go to the channel to check out the Newegg saga. We made a playlist for it as well. Or you can go to store.gamersnexus.net to grab things like our coaster packs or mouse mats. We'll see you all next time.